Hello, and this is the second tutorial on prepping your images for the poster and for all things in Photoshop. This will involve selecting parts of the image to alter so that you don't alter the whole image. Up to this, I've shown you ways to alter the entire image. And so we'll build with that. Now, obviously, I want to remind you that you should make a copy of your original. Do not work on your original. Work on a copy of that, and then we can build from there. Now, the first step here is also in dealing with this image where we're going to alter the sky, and we're going to alter the sky in a number of ways, because the interesting thing in Photoshop, the interesting thing in digital photography is there's a lot more color there. I mean, that's why filters work on Instagram. That's why filters work anywhere, because the color does exist there, and it's a question of what we do with it. And digital also gives us a chance to change it a little bit or do things, because we've got components of a nice sunset, but it's pretty gray up here in the corner. And you will be surprised when you see that there's actually color there that we can use. Now, one of the first things we do, just like you preserve the image, the original image, and work on a copy, we want to preserve the original layer that is holding the original picture. So we're going to go into the layer menu. As you can see over here on the right-hand side, I have color swatches, gradients, patterns. Okay, I have the properties, and then adjustments window, libraries that I don't really have anything in. And so this tells me about the document. It tells me the width is 3,264 pixels, so it's big. The height is 2448. It is in a portrait mode. Okay, the mode is RGB color, 8 bits of color per channel. And then here I have layers, and below that I have a multitude of windows that I was able to open in Windows here. I know the ones I want to have access to in Photoshop. And I have histories, I have actions, which we're not really going to do. There's some additional tools related to the cloning tool that we saw before. Then if we did text, for the assignment, I don't want you to do the text in Photoshop. And actually, I think in general, you shouldn't do text in Photoshop because you have a lot more control in Illustrator. So there's the character and the layout. So you have a lot of Illustrator tools, but when you put things into Photoshop, ultimately, it feels to me, at least, I don't have as much control over it. And I'm much more comfortable working with type in Illustrator. Then you have glyphs, which are the letter forms of within a font that shows you what those letters look like. Okay, so that's what it told me. We'll just go to Super Clarendon. There you go. Now you see what those letter forms looks like. But for us, it's very important. You can see I've done some history, that we will be working with history because your undos are limited. So in Photoshop, we use history to do undos. So I'm going to go here, and actually I can right click or I can option click. Okay, not what I wanted. Or let's just see. There we go. That's the control key. So I'll do that again. Control click. And then I get this pull down menu, and I'm going to say duplicate layer. I'm just going to keep it simple, call it background copy. I've done that copy. And in fact, I'm going to turn the bottom layer off. And now what happens is I need to save this again. And because it is more than one layer, it will no longer be saved as a JPEG file, because now it's a Photoshop file. So I will do File, Save As, and it's going to be in the same place, so it'll be easily done. But you can see it automatically says it will be in Photoshop. It now becomes a .psd file. So that means it has multiple layers. There will be a point where we can come back and save it as a JPEG and it will flatten it back out. But right now we want those layers because those layers give us power and give us the ability to do things. So I can just simply save it. And so now we're working with 2 layers, but I'm just going to work on the top. Now, one of the key things you're going to be doing here is you're going to be selecting space. Now, this particular photograph is very easy to select spaces because it is very high contrast. And what that means is the dark to the light. That makes it possible. What we're going to use is the magic wand tool. Okay, select similarly colored image areas. Okay, if you can use this to learn how this tutorial to find out more, but I'll select the magic wand. It's actually in a group, so I think at default that's how that button is going to appear. But we want to, I'm going to Control click, and then I'm going to go to the magic wand tool. And so what I do is I click this space. If we look up here, it's giving me a lot of information about the magic wand. But one of the key things is tolerance. 32 is a very standard setting. The higher that number is, the more tolerant of different colors it is. Okay, so if I take it, so let me just show you here. If I click it once, it has now selected that band. That it represents the 32 tolerance it has. And now if you look across here, you can see where it's high contrast. It has very easily grabbed that area beyond that, on that edge, because that is much farther than 32 away. But what I can also show you is, I'll make that tolerance lower, so I'll make it 1. If I do 1, hopefully you can see that it's just picking that single pixel. If I go 10, it's going to pick a broader band of pixel. Remember, in Photoshop, it is bitmapped, which means you have individual colors, each pixel has its own color. So what we see as lovely gradient or things like that is not really that. That is our brain closing it and putting those objects together and giving them color, giving them meaning, making you think that this is the Louvre Abu Dhabi and those sorts of things. So that would be 10. I go to 32. 32 gives us that substantial carriage. If I go up to 100, you can see I get a massive area. Actually, 100 even still works, but with that greater tolerance, we're actually starting to reach into the roof down here, and it's a little too much. So I'm going to take it back to 32. We already know that that is not going to select everything. Now remember, if I want to deselect, I can go Command D. If I want to deselect, I can go to Select and Deselect. So I've deselected. Now, to grab objects with the magic wand, so I start down here at the bottom, and it's reaching in. Then to add more places, I am going to shift click, and it's expanding out. So now it's pushed right up to the edge. And as I grab these other colors, and they're more similar, so I'll grab down in the corner, and I'll get into this corner. And now what I have completely grabbed is the sky. Okay, so that is what I have grabbed. So that means when I do any sort of adjustment, it will only happen in the selected area. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit so you can see the marquee around the whole area. So we have some choices here, and in general, it's always good to keep the picture intact, but we can cut some pieces out, and it could enhance our ability. But let me just show you what is going to happen with this space and with this selection. Remember, over here I've got the background. It's safe and secure if something goes wrong. Now, if I go to image, one of the first things I do is I want to find the color in that sky. So I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and I'm going to go to color balance. Now, color balance, one of the first colors that is obviously here in this sky is the yellow. Now I'm looking at that, and you can see I've boosted the yellow. Now, I'm going to stop for a minute and cancel this, because if we look, there's another area where I want to boost the color. And hopefully you can see that is down here in this tiny little opening. This sunset is also shining through. I've still got the magic wand tool. This upper part is selected. I'll hold the shift key down, and I will now select that space as well, so that when I improve the color in the rest of the image, then it will also improve there exactly the same way. So I've added that. We still have the top part selected. Now let me go back to doing image, adjustment. So I'm going to do color balance. Now the thing is, it says image adjustment, but because I've selected a specific part of the picture, it is only going to select that part of the picture. So what I can do now is what I did before. I boosted up the yellow, and that looks a little more flavorful. But the thing that happened here, it's kind of interesting, is that this feels a little green now. And we don't really think of green in a sunset. So if I add red, it starts to color it, but still when green and red are together, it actually stays gray. So what I'm going to do is go to this third slider, the middle slider, and I'm going to go away from the green and toward the magenta, and you'll see that now I get this strong red. I could even pull it back a little and keep the yellows in there, and we've got a really strong orange here. And so I'll say, okay, I've grabbed a lot of color there, and so I click OK. And that looks pretty cool, but maybe we want some more color. And so I will go to image, adjustment, and I will go to hue saturation. And I will now increase the saturation. It's only happening in the selected area. I'm going to increase the saturation. And I don't want it to get too fake, but that is really giving us an orange-yellow sky. Okay, so now what we do is we keep that color. Now, I'm now going to show you something that is a personal habit of mine, and I don't know if it's a generally done thing, but I am going to copy this sky that I've created. I am then going to paste it. So it was Command C and then Command V. So it is sitting right there, and I'm going to use that later just in case when I want to quickly grab that color. So I could turn that off, or I could turn that on. Well, I could leave it on now, because actually If I turn it off or on, you can't even see it, you can't see that anything's happening. So what I'm going to do is come back here, and you can also see how the yellow here on the passageway through the museum, the fact that you can see through it, is emphasized. So what I'm now going to do, and see that if we look here, whoops, I don't have it visible. So there you can see that yellow is there. This whole structure is here. So it is all there. I'll go back to this image, and I want to create something a little more interesting that is really going to make the sky pop more. One of the key areas of emphasis, and if you look at the Louvre, is about it being black and white and things like that. So very much the architecture looks that way. In the daytime it's very white, in the night it's very dark. And even if you go back to that one poster that I like a lot, is that it really emphasizes the black and white with some contrast to the color. So what I'm going to do is now change this structure. I'm going to change the whole picture, in fact, because I've saved here. There's a couple of ways to do this. I think the safest way, I'm going to do the safest way, which is I'm going to use the magic wand again. So I'm only in this second layer. I'm going to save right now. So I'm saving all 3 layers, but I'm in this second layer. I'm going to shift with my magic wand. I'm going to shift here so you can see it actually grabs a little differently. And I'll get that little dot right there. Looks like everything is grabbed. And then I'm also going to shift and grab the yellow in that area. Now, I don't want to change that part. I want to change the opposite. So I go up to select, which is selection, and I will select the inverse. So hopefully what you can see now is that the bottom is now selected. So that will be the part that I'm changing. One issue though is I've got light coming through. I've got light coming through the roof, and that's important, just like this light is here. So what I'm going to do is deselect this, because the roof itself already looks black. It's already in silhouette. So the way I'm going to do that is with the polygon lasso. And this is a little more complex, but working with the polygon lasso, you can operate with straight lines. And what we can do is take away part of this selection. So I'll choose the polygon lasso, and that's what it looks like. I will now hold the Option key, and hopefully you can see there that it now has the polygon lasso shape, and it has a minus. Remember, when I pushed the Shift key, I actually got a plus. With the magic wand, same thing works with the lasso. So I'm now going to hold the Option key, and I am going to follow the straight line of this roof, of this part of the building. I'm going to come straight down the edge. Then I'm going to go awesomely great, straight line all the way across here. Then I can just go up into here. I can close off what I've grabbed, and that's now not selected. I'm only looking at the bottom part of the building. I'm going to leave the top part of the building alone. And one way I could choose, I'm headed toward turning it black and white. One way I could choose to do that is, once again, with image adjustments, I could go into hue saturation. So hue saturation, if we look at saturation, that's how much color there is. So I could very simply pull out the color, take out saturation, and make it black and white. Okay, and I could make it lighter, I could make it darker. Overall, And I really, honestly, I don't want to do either one of those things. This is not nearly enough control over what I want to do. So there is another adjustment layer that is a lot more powerful, and it is called black and white. And yes, it seems a bit more confusing, okay? And it comes out with certain settings, but it is going to allow me to take different parts of the color and change them to different levels of black and white. Now, when I look at, so I'll take preview off, and if I look here, I've always sort of gotten a green feeling. So let's just look, if I try to change that, and I want to actually reduce this because it's attracting a lot of attention in this picture. And it's really kind of unnecessary attention. So I want to darken it up a little bit. So my first instinct is to say, hey, let's pull the green out and see what happens. Okay? Not a lot. There's not a lot that happened there. So let's go back again, take the preview off, and sort of recognize that that is more yellow. So if I take yellow out, and I go back to preview so I can see it, if I take yellow out, it is going to darken that portion of the image, and actually it's going to darken the sea a little bit because there's some yellow reflection there. But the thing is also with this, we still get the ripples of the sea, we still get that sense, and now the whole museum has become more of a silhouette. And this, by just manipulating that color, has become less interesting. Now we really have sort of two separate three planes. We have the plane of the sky and the sunset. We have the museum in the middle area, very much dead middle, and then we have the water below, which is an interesting combination. So I'm going to stay with this. I'm going to go with this. And now I've got a black and white foreground, and the color really pops. So I will do deselect. I've deselected, and now I've adjusted those colors. I'm ready to do manipulations and things like that. Now I want to show you, but actually I see one more distracting thing. Now this is pretty clearly a window, and there's a window, very white. I don't want them to go away, but I'm going to start to create, it's going to become more of an illustration and less of a photograph, okay, because I'm going to, photographic illustration. But I've thought of the idea of what I'd like to do is make the image inside here the same, the color inside there the same as this color here. So I will now go to the eyedropper tool, which is right here. I will go into there and I will click on it. Now what that shows me is the color I'm grabbing. So I'm grabbing the top part of that arc, which is that yellow, and that yellow we now see up here, and we also see it on what I call the color chip, and it is the foreground color. So let me go back to the magic wand. I will select this window space, which it grabs fairly easily. Then I will select this window space, and so I shift clicked it, so I now have both spaces, and I want to fill those with color, with the color I just selected. So I'll go to Edit, Fill, okay, contents can be black or white, 50% gray, but I very specifically have put it into the foreground color. I'll say okay, and now, even though it's not fully realistic, it gives the impression that that light comes through. And so I'm gonna leave it at that at this point. I'm going to once again select, I'm going to deselect. So there you can see we sort of have the sense we have a little bit of color in this black and white, and there's a lot of things we can do with this, and I'll be doing that in the next video, which is cutting it, pairing it, putting it onto the poster. But I want to show you one kind of crazy idea that could work with this. Now, there's actually a Magritte painting that's very famous where he combined nighttime, sort of dusk, and daylight, and it creates a very weird image because we could completely change the sky. And let me quickly show you how I do that. Now, I have downloaded some clouds, and that's the clouds I like. It's pretty dynamic. I'll do Command D, and then I'll do Command A, so I select it all, or I go to select all, okay, edit, copy. Now that is copied, it is sitting in the clipboard, it is waiting for me to do something with it. And if I go to Louvre Sunset, okay, what I can do, first of all, I want to save it because I'm happy with where it is right now, and there's a bunch of things I can do. It's certainly not perfect, but there are ways I can use this image. So I am now going to save this, and I am actually going to save a new version that I'm going to manipulate. I'm going to do save as, and as I told you, I'm going to call it, instead of Louvre Sunset, I'm going to call it Louvre Magritte. And the thing is, you can also see it's multiple layers, so it's PSD. So I'm going to say save, okay. Now I'm going to select the sky again, using the magic wand. We'll add anything we don't grab, we grab in the middle. We go out there. I can see a little dot up there. There's a dot there, grabbed all those things. We're grabbing more. So whoops, let's go down to this corner. So you can see, whoops. So I can undo that last one just by doing Command Z, because each of the magic wands are individual actions. I'll go back up here, go Shift. Okay, so that's given me a bit of a problem. And what I can do as well is I could grab the marquee selection tool. I could go Shift, and I can grab those two dots. Should be able to. Let me see. Okay, I have grabbed them. They're not marqueed anymore. Everything's marqueed on the edge. Now, this is one of the really powerful things, and this is intended to create sort of a bizarre consequence. But let me also grab those yellow areas. Okay, so I'm going to shift on this window, shift on this window, and shift on this window. Whoops, and I want to get more of it. Okay, I'm not getting as much of it as I want, so I'm going to zoom in. Okay, now I see what I'm grabbing. All right, so there I grabbed all the yellow. I will stay with the magic wand because I've zoomed in. I will now go Shift. There we go. And I'm grabbing that. I will go Shift here. I've grabbed the whole thing, which is pretty much okay. Let me go back to Command 0 so we see the whole thing. So the sky and the other is chosen. Now what I'm going to do, remember that sky is on the clipboard. I'm going to do Command minus so we can see everything. Let's go, that's one. So we can see the edges. 0, command minus is going to give it to us. And I'm now going to edit, paste special, paste into. Okay, I have now pasted the sky, and you can even see it down here. Okay, a low sun, but basically a daytime sky. I've pasted it in, and even though it's not exactly a copy in the top of the roof shows light coming through. And the thing I want to do is, it is now selected here. So I am going to go to edit. If you remember when I did the distortions and things, I can go to transform and I can do scale. And when I do scale, it's going to give me some handles, and you can see those. And when the arrow is over it, I can move it around. And there's the middle of it. That's pretty it's a pretty large image. I should definitely fix that spot. Okay, it's a pretty large image. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit smaller so I can see it, holy moly. And I am now in the scaling tool. So this is telling me. So let's just start at 50%. The proportions are locked. So when I change width, it will also change height. All right, you're not seeing it right now, but I put the arrow over it, and I now have that sky. If I hold shift click on a corner, it's going to maintain my proportions I guess it's not. The shift doesn't matter. Okay, it does matter after I finish. It locks it in. And there, I was losing it down at the bottom a little bit. So then, I can put that in. I use the check mark to accept it. And now it's a very strange image. The clouds are very close. It's like a big storm. So this is just kind of a bizarro image of two different times of day being depicted, and we can see parts of those images here coming through. So this becomes a bit more bizarre as an image, and so you can do things like that, and that's just a little craziness. I wanted to show you, I'm going to save that. I wanted to show you a similar thing that we could do. Remember, we had, I went through this and I did HDR toning on this building outside of Beijing. I'm going to now do, I'm going to duplicate the layer on the background. All right, I'm going to duplicate it right there. I'm going to turn off the bottom. I'm now going to file save as, and that's going to save it as a PSD because it's multiple layers. I will now go to this, and this gray is so even that it essentially grabs all of the picture at the same time. But a little bit of what I've lost is that shadow of the mountain that's up here. So let's see if I reduce the tolerance. So I'll take it to 10 because these colors are very similar. I'll do Command D for deselect. I'm now grabbing it. I'm getting a little bit more. I'm getting a bit of that mountain. So I'm going to take it even lower. And I'll say 5. I will deselect. And you can see this, and actually I've gotten more of it there. I'm going to take some of these little spots and try to see what happens if I try to grab there. Let's look in closer. You can always go in closer. We can see what's being grabbed and what's not, and that spot is just going to be confusing, as might that. There we go. that one. I'm going to Command Z that one, and we'll just leave it. These are just some objects on the edge of the sky here. Okay, and it is a bit of the mountains, but I want them to be fairly even. Let's see what I get with that. What do I get with that? And okay, actually, in this situation, I will change because I want to have control over it. So I'm going to change back to the polygon lasso, and there we go. I've started. I'm going to go up to this space. I'll come down here, and I'm going to try to grab these more random of spots. I will go around there. I'm not going to get them all, but this will allow me to get a whole bunch. I can even go around that one. And it's just that the polygon lasso is keeping things in straight line. And we're going to see what the effect here is in a moment. Okay, so now I've grabbed those and not going to worry about it in this minute. Then we can actually see the artifacts that will occur. But that is part of the image happening out there, and that's what the HDR did to it. So, now there's at least this one floating out here that does bother me more. So I am now going to do Shift, and I will. Now that's not selected. So now, hopefully it'll be kind of natural. And I have, so what I'm going to do is put a blue sky in here. Now I'm not going to go crazy with the cloud. Well, I could try going crazy with the clouds. Let's just take a look. So I will select all. I will copy. I will go back to the HDR. I will say edit. Paste special. Paste into. And then you can see there, if I go to edit and transform and scale, let's just see. All right, that picture is not a whole lot larger than this one, but it's clouds. Maybe we can manipulate it a little bit. I'm going to pull it up there. Okay, so that is holding. It is holding the perspective. And this actually is not really working up here, so I'd want to take it out. And there's not a lot we could do with scaling this, but we can potentially give it these clouds. So that's one way to look at it. I'm not a huge fan of that, so I'm going to go back out. I'm going to disallow this selection. I will go back up to polygon lasso. I'm going to find there. No, let me see. I believe I have one that's mostly sky. Or I could do this one that's like crazy clouds. I'm going to play with this just for a minute. I'm going to paste into. And See, those clouds are just like too big. They're not proportionally correct. But let me do to edit, transform, scale. And there we can see, we'll get a little bit more this way. We can move the clouds up. Yeah, not getting a desired effect. So I will prohibit that and undo it. I will then go to this, which is primarily blue sky. And that's the one. I will copy it, come back here, file, paste into, which is edit, paste special, paste into. And there you can see what essentially I have done is given it a blue sky.